Is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Here's what will happen, is the Taliban will begin to mass at some point to take down the major cities in Afghanistan. They're holding back quite now, I think, until the United States is pretty much all gone. And then we'll see that.
Let's bring in our panel to discuss that. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Harold Ford Jr., former Tennessee congressman and CEO of Empowerment and Inclusion Capital. And Bill McGurn, columnist for the Wall Street Journal. Let's start right there. Molly, the president says a couple of things. He does not trust the Taliban. He also says, listen, they're a smaller force, only 75,000 versus possibly 300,000 in the Afghan army. But they've been very effective, even with their smaller numbers.
You know, this is really about so much more. It's about how we fight wars and what we're thinking. It was almost 20 years ago that our friend Charles Krauthammer gave a speech in which he said that it would be good to spread democracy from North Africa to Afghanistan. He noted that many conservatives thought it wouldn't work, and he said it might not work, but he thought we should give it a try. We have given it a try. We have given it a very long try. It has cost trillions of dollars. Thousands of people's lives have been lost. And the nation of Afghanistan might not be able to make it, even after we've invested so many resources. But really what is important is that the United States understands that the way that we fight wars, we have to have clear metrics of success. We have to understand why we're there, and we have to move away from nation building into fighting wars that are solely in our national interest, or laser focused on our national interest. And so all these questions about how things are going to go in Afghanistan, I think, miss that point that we tried this experiment and it did not work.
And the president was asked today about whether this was a mission accomplished moment. That's what I think people across the world, and certainly here at home in America, want to hear. Did we accomplish something? What did we accomplish? Here's what the president said on that point.
If this isn't a mission accomplished moment, what is it in your
No,
view?
there's no mission accomplished.
How would you describe it?
The mission was accomplished in that we got Osama bin Laden, and terrorism is not emanating from that part of the world.
But, Harold, how concerned should we be now that some of those forces could reconfigure there? Because it's not just the U.S. leaving. There are other good actors also leaving a very troubled area. Or, Bill,
so
I think that Harold maybe is having a little trouble. Bill, okay, Harold, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Thanks for I can hear you. Look, I agree largely with the predicate that Molly has articulated. I think it is, 20 years, $4 trillion. We've made progress there. I do think we have found that the culture and persistent history of tribalism has undermined our efforts to bring about the kind of unity or centralized government in Afghanistan that we want. But also consistent with Molly's points, 20 years later, technology has grown, satellites, drones. We'll be able to prosecute this effort, protect our interests, and ensure the one thing that we don't want to see happen, which is those grounds there in Afghanistan, the Taliban again becoming a haven for terrorist organizations. If that happens, I would imagine this administration would follow the lead of itself and General Keane and others who urge that we be able to get back on the ground there. Because at the end of the day, our focus has to shift. China presents itself as that geographical, economic, and military threat that we're going to have to focus on, much like we focused on Russia during the Cold War in the 20th century.
Yeah, and the president today did not, as you noted, say that we would never go back or that American troops would never be called back into that arena. The Washington Examiner, writing about that, said this: the implication, should the Taliban fight their way back to running the country, Washington might conclude that it is acceptable, so long as it does not harbor extremist groups such as al-Qaeda, the Islamic State group, or others that might plot attacks on the U.S., its interests abroad, or close allies. But, Bill, it seems that throws us back into the same calculations we're always having to make about how much we let the quote-unquote bad guys have a say or, a hand in running the country when we have worries about things that will impact our interests or those of our allies.
Yeah, look, Shannon, I was in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen way back before this war, in the first war in Afghanistan when they were fighting the Soviets. And you know, I'm old enough to remember Vietnam. I'm old enough to remember, you know, the reformation of like ISIS after we led the area. So I wish I could be optimistic, but I can't. The last time we thought Afghanistan didn't matter, you know, they came and knocked down 2 of our buildings in Manhattan and attacked the Pentagon. And I just don't believe that the air capabilities are going to be sufficient. Look what happened in Benghazi, because it took hours for flights to get there. I just don't think you can substitute for troops on the ground. We had, I believe, 3 casualties this year, none of them combat related. You know, we're still in Germany after defeating Hitler, and we're in Korea and Japan after World War II, and that's been to our benefit to help stabilize the region. I just think this is going to go down as a terrible mistake.
Well, the president did talk, too, about these calculations about why to get out, how to get out, when to get out. I'll play a little bit more of what he had to say on that front today.
The U.S. military mission to Afghanistan continues through the end of August. Let me ask those who want us to stay, how many thousands more Americans, daughters and sons, are you willing to risk? I will not send another generation of Americans to war in Afghanistan with no reasonable expectation of achieving a different outcome. The United States cannot afford to remain tethered to policies created in response to a world as it was 20 years ago.
And Molly, that gets to your point about trying an experiment, seeing whether it works, what our role is there. Do you think the president has articulated well about the reasoning for leaving now?
I actually think he did a great job with it, and I want to commend him for staying strong under so much pressure from the military-industrial complex. Also, that President Trump set that deadline, which helped get this going, is very good. More than anything, though, it's a reminder, too, about how that same military, how the brass did not do a good job of preparing for exit. One of the ways they kept us there for so long was by never really developing a strategy for how to leave, and it would trap presidents into staying. And we're seeing some of the fallout of that now, but President Biden is doing the right thing by not allowing that to continue and insisting that we stick with this plan. And hopefully things will go well from here on out. But it was long fought for by many people, so kudos to him.
Yeah, and John Kirby said yesterday that the whole idea is getting towards a negotiated, peaceful political solution to this whole thing. But Harold, when a lot of people say they can't trust the Taliban as, you know, a negotiating partner at the table, how does that resolution eventually come about?
Right. If we stayed indefinitely or stayed a longer period of time, I don't mean to put words in Bill's mouth, but if we stayed, the Taliban is not gradually becoming a more trustworthy organization. What we're finding is that we have other priorities. We can manage the situation with new technology, and hopefully we don't have to find our way back there. But I think this is the right thing to do. It's a tough decision, and I expect the military to have countered the president some on this, but hopefully they reach an agreement within our military and White House that if there's a problem, we can get back quickly. And let's hope that we don't have to go back and we're able to manage this situation and get on to dealing with China and our other foes.
Quick closing comment to you, Bill, on this topic.
Well, weren't the South Vietnamese reassured that if something happened, the U.S. would be back there to do it? I'm not sure the new technology helped much in Benghazi when those guys were out of reach of air support. I hope they're right, but again, this looks to me like it has a lot of wishful thinking behind it.